let's talk about one of the strangest media storms we've seen in a while, because this one really stretches the imagination. A claim suddenly appears, attributed to a deeply respected conservation icon who is no longer here to clarify anything, and somehow Prince Harry is painted as the villain of the week. Again. And honestly, at this point, it's less journalism and more creative writing with a microphone. According to Tina Brown, during an interview, Prince Harry allegedly introduced his newborn child to Jane Goodall as "my little African child." That line alone should have raised eyebrows instantly. Not because of Harry, but because of how wildly out of character it sounds. Anyone who has followed Harry's public life for more than 5 minutes knows he chooses his words carefully, especially when it comes to identity, culture, and respect. This isn't a man who casually tosses out phrases without thinking. This is a man who has spent decades being overanalyzed for every single syllable. What makes this even more uncomfortable is how the claim was presented. It wasn't framed as speculation. It was stated as something said by Jane Goodall herself, a woman who cannot confirm, deny, or clarify. And that's where things cross from questionable to outright unfair. Using the voice of someone who has passed away to prop up a sensational claim is not bold journalism. It's convenient storytelling. Harry's response, through his spokesperson, was swift and very clear. The statement flatly denied that he ever said anything remotely like what was claimed. No hedging, no vague language, just a firm, direct rejection. And then came the part that really matters, the accusation that Tina Brown knew exactly what she was doing, inventing words, assigning them to a respected woman who is no longer alive to correct the record. That's not an emotional reaction. That's a serious charge. Now, here's where things get almost comical, if they weren't so serious. After the backlash, Tina Brown walked the statement back. Suddenly, it wasn't African child. It was Africa child. Apparently, she was speaking too quickly. Which is an interesting explanation, because those are not tiny interchangeable details. That's not mispronouncing a name or mixing up a date. That's a fundamentally different phrase with very different implications. And let's be honest for a second. If this were anyone else, any other public figure, this would have been treated as a major credibility issue. But because it's Prince Harry, the story is allowed to wobble, shift, and still be pushed as somehow meaningful. The bar for accuracy drops dramatically when the target is someone the media feels entitled to misrepresent. What's also being completely ignored is the actual context of Harry's relationship with Africa. His connection to the continent is well documented, deeply personal, and rooted in years of conservation work, advocacy, and lived experience. Africa isn't a buzzword for him. It's a place tied to growth, healing, and purpose. So the idea that he would reduce his own child to a label in such a clumsy and insensitive way just doesn't add up. And then there's Jane Goodall herself, a woman known for empathy, precision, and thoughtful language. Does it really make sense that she would recount such a phrase without nuance, without explanation, without context? Or does it make more sense that her words were filtered, paraphrased, and then reshaped to fit a narrative that would generate headlines? After her passing, Harry and Meghan released a statement that spoke volumes about the real relationship they shared with Jane Goodall. Their words were warm, respectful, and deeply appreciative of her impact on the world and on them personally. They spoke of her kindness, her care, and the love she showed when meeting their child. That doesn't sound like a connection built on careless language or awkward labelling. That sounds like mutual respect. What we're really seeing here is a familiar pattern. Take something private, remove context, add just enough ambiguity to spark outrage. Then let it run wild across social media while corrections quietly trail behind, if they come at all. And when the damage is done, everyone shrugs and moves on to the next manufactured controversy. The frustrating part is that Harry and Meghan rarely benefit from the benefit of the doubt. Every story about them is framed as suspicious by default. Every denial is treated as defensive. Meanwhile, those making the claims are often excused as simply misspeaking or being misunderstood. It's a double standard that's become painfully obvious. And let's inject a bit of humour here, because otherwise this whole thing is just exhausting. Apparently, words only matter when Harry says them. When someone else says them incorrectly, too quickly or inconsistently, that's just an oopsie. Journalism by autocorrect. The bigger question is why these stories keep surfacing in the first place. Why is there such a relentless need to paint Harry as reckless, insensitive or naive, despite years of evidence to the contrary? The answer is simple. Outrage sells. And Harry and Meghan remain profitable targets for people who know controversy keeps them relevant. But here's the thing. People are catching on. Audiences are more media literate than ever. They can see when a story doesn't quite add up. They can recognize when a narrative feels forced. And increasingly, they're questioning why certain voices are amplified while others are dismissed. Harry didn't just deny the claim. He defended the integrity of someone who could no longer speak for herself. That matters. That shows awareness, responsibility, and respect. Traits that somehow never make it into the headlines. At the end of the day, this isn't really about one phrase or one interview. It's about how easily misinformation can spread when it's wrapped in authority and nostalgia. It's about how public figures are expected to absorb distortion without protest. And it's about why pushing back, clearly and firmly, is sometimes the only option. So, as viewers, listeners and critical thinkers, it's on us to ask better questions. Who benefits from this story? Why now? And why does the version keep changing? Because when the facts keep shifting, the credibility usually does too. And on that note, if you appreciate content that actually slows things down, looks at the full picture, and calls out nonsense when it sees it, make sure you support Sussex Insights. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future deep dives, and if you're able, consider showing your support through super thanks. It genuinely helps keep the channel going. Drop your thoughts in the comments as well. Do you think this was a misunderstanding or a deliberate attempt to stir controversy? Let's talk about it. And as always, thank you for being here, for thinking critically, and for supporting balanced conversations in a very noisy media world.